Bring the lights down low, it's time to show. Lights, camera, you know what we mean. Behold the magic of the silver screen. Some movies rock, some movies shock. They're powerful, alright. We cover them all on your favorite parts. So many movies we can choose. Even when you win, you lose. Life moves pretty fast. Some will fizzle and some movies last. I understood there would be no math. It's the 30-something movie podcast. Be excellent to each other. Please add a word to your mother. They're from the best decades. Movie magic that never fades. Lightsabers clash, phasers set to stun. Action packed from dusk till dawn. We have deep thoughts and questions three. Come share our love of the movies we see. Life moves pretty fast. Some will fizzle and some movies last. I understood there would be no math. It's the 30-something movie podcast.
Hey everybody, it's a new month. It's still the same old 30-something movie podcast, but it's a new month. It's the month of April. It is love and drama month, so all of our movies kind of fall into that category. And we're starting it off with Don Juan DeMarco. That is our first movie for this month with Marlon Brando, Johnny Depp. But I can't do this alone, so I have brought along my other fellow conquistadors. There is Don Bo Warmbold.
Yo,
Bo, how's it going?
it's quite well. And yourself?
¿Cómo está?
Bien. Bien.
Good. We're stretching the limits of my Spanish knowledge. I'm finding that the
Doing
French
just fine so
finding
far.
finding that the French I took in high school is not getting a lot of usage. But maybe next week for Forget Paris.
There you go.
And then also we have Don Patricio Cantagallo.
Hey,
How are you
how
doing,
are
Pat?
we doing?
Doing pretty good. Excited for our slate of movies this month. We've got some good ones. We've got we're starting off with Don Juan DeMarco. Forget Paris is next week. Then we got Mr. Holland's Opus. Then we're doing our 10th anniversary rewatch for this month is Blue Velvet from 1986. Then we got Leaving Las Vegas and The American President. So we got some really, really good stuff coming up this month.
Awesome.
No. I do want to take a moment because we got some news early on today. I feel like right around the time we were all waking up and getting ready to go off to work this morning, we got some news of the passing of Val Kilmer. He was 65 years old. Did I read that he passed because of pneumonia?
I think that's
complications because of pneumonia? Okay. So there were a lot of we're on a bunch of different text threads with like the Shirley podcast guys and a bunch of other podcasters that we chime in back and forth with a lot of stuff with each other, and so there was a lot of Val Kilmer love going around today, and I think a special place in our hearts because Val Kilmer was the very first actor to listen to our podcast while mowing his lawn.
Mm.
So
Yeah. Connection.
So Val was our first, our best, our always. Anyway, tell me a little bit about like what's your I don't know, you want to give me your favorite Val Kilmer movie? My favorite memory from one of his movies. I mean, my first thought goes to Tombstone and Doc Holliday. Like, and I'm trying to think of, I was trying to look at lists of his movies and I'm like, okay, which ones have I not seen that I really need to see out of his movies? And I don't remember who made the comment in one of the text threads that we were in, but his filmography, I try to remember who said it in one of the text threads. His filmography goes to show that sometimes Oscars don't mean a whole lot. Because I don't think, is it true he did not win an Oscar ever?
Yeah, not that I'm aware of.
Yeah. But I mean, look at the films he was in, and even the films that he was in where the film itself did not get a good review or a good score, I guarantee you that man consistently gave 120% when he went into his movies.
Yeah. Yeah. Just so awesome to watch on screen.
Yeah. Well, and it was fun to see some of the stories, people remembering some different stories about him. Somebody had posted up the story of when he went into the audition for the Doors. Like he showed up with like, no shirt and tight pants, and he just kind of waltzed into the interview as if he was Jim Morrison.
Mm-hmm.
Or there was the one somebody had asked Michael Biehn at some point, what was it like to work with Val Kilmer? He's like, I don't know. I never worked with Val Kilmer. I got to work with Doc Holliday though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fun. Those remembrances.
Yeah. So what do you have? And Pat, I don't want to assume that your answer is Heat, but do you have a favorite Val Kilmer movie?
Yeah, well, and I think it was funny, but I was reading through some of those text streams that you mentioned before. People were asking about, top 3 movies, and someone listed top 3 roles and then top 3 of your favorite movies that he happens to be in,
Sure,
right?
yeah.
So they're breaking it down just to be able to get his movies out there more. Yeah, he's just incredible in everything that he's in. He'll always be Iceman.
Yep.
Right? Because I grew up watching Top Gun, so he'll always be Iceman. And then Heat is one of my favorite movies, and he's Chris Shaharless. I mean, he's really, really good in that one. And he's just not only just great at bringing these characters to life and acting, but also just the physical thing that he brings. In some of those Heat action sequences, and Top Gun just being supposed to be like a physical specimen kind of thing. And then you mentioned Tombstone, and it's like, yeah, that's got to be on the list. That's definitely got to be on the list because he's just great as Doc Holliday. In that movie.
Yeah, when I was, because I was trying to chime in with a list of 3, trying to narrow it down to 3, and I think my 3 that I narrowed it down to is Tombstone, just because possibly one of my favorite characters of any movie ever is Doc Holliday in Tombstone, and you don't get. I know Dennis Quaid played Doc Holliday in the Wyatt Earp movie, and he had his own spin on it, but to my mind, you're never going to find anybody who did the same, just had the same impact as his version, as Val Kilmer's version of Doc Holliday for that story. And he is one of my favorite characters in any movie. I had that one. That was probably my top of my list. And then Willow, just because I love that movie and I love his character of Mad Mardigan in that one.
Right.
Because again, you've got the physical bit. I mean, he's doing the sword fighting. He's doing all the other stuff. He's funny. He's, it's very much a Han Solo kind of a character. But I'll even argue it's a little, Han Solo can kind of come across as a little, especially as he gets older, a little gruff. And Han Solo, for the most part, is pretty charming. But I almost think, in a certain way, maybe Mad Mardigan might be even a little bit more charming than Han Solo. I think that could be argued. I think it could be argued. But yeah, Willow was my second, and what was my third? I was trying to remember what my third was. I think it was The Doors, just because I forgot he wasn't Jim Morrison when we were watching that movie.
Yeah,
Right.
And he's one of those actors where when he's in the movie, you kind of forget that that's Val Kilmer.
right.
And even some of his ones that don't get as good of scores as some of the other movies, he was great in The Saint. He was great in that movie At First.
Yeah. Wow. I forgot about The Saint.
Yeah, and that one At First Sight, when he's the blind artist, I think, and he is able to see. Like they do some operation on him, and he's able to see. But yeah, so many movies, and he's so good in all of them. I can't, even if the movie itself is not great, Val Kilmer in it has always been good. I'll even argue Island of Dr. Moreau, not a good movie. Val Kilmer is still good in that movie.
Okay.
Mission to Mars. I think I'm doing the right one. Was it Mission to Mars or Ghosts of Mars?
Mission to Mars.
Mission to Mars. Okay. Not necessarily a great movie. Val Kilmer's good in it.
I would agree with that.
So I'd say he elevates even a bad movie. If he's in it, he's going to elevate it.
I agree with that.
Did you guys ever get a chance to see the documentary Val?
No, I have
Okay.
not. I was actually talking to my wife about it last night, saying that we have to watch it.
Yeah.
I believe it's still on Amazon Prime, and if you are going to watch it, I would say definitely bring a box of tissues with you, because there are some moments like it. You kind of go through. I mean, he talks pretty. Again, it's filmed recently, so he is his ability to speak for long periods of time is not necessarily there. And I did not know some of the stuff he went throughout the course of his life. And, his desire to always push himself, to always be in quality movies, not to just sign up for every little thing that came along. And then some of the ways in which he tried to help. There's this whole section about him trying to help his father, and he lost a ton of money because of some stuff his father did. And there's a lot of him just trying to be a good actor and seemingly trying to be a good person and such. I mean, there's plenty of portions of that where life just kind of seems to find a way to beat him up. And so, yes, there are some fairly emotional parts in that movie. So if you end up going to watch that, I think it's on Amazon Prime. If you end up going to watch it, definitely, if that's the kind of thing that sets you off and you might need to bring a handkerchief with you, then make sure you've got one available, because there are a few moments.
Right.
All right. Well, before we come back to April of 1995, anything else you want to say about Val Kilmer? Other than what I posted up this morning, the line, Wyatt Earp's final line to him in Tombstone, thanks for always being there, Doc.
Yeah. I think that quote's a great way to end.
Yeah.
All right. Well, from there, we're going to hop in the DeLorean, head back to 1995, and see what happened in the month of April in 1995.
When this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see some serious.
Okay, sometimes when I write down these, because there's a lot of stuff that happened in each of these months in the years that we go through. Sometimes when I write things down, I'm like, okay, that's a pretty heavy topic. Second thing, it's like, that's, well, literally heavy, but it's not heavy at all. So I'm really enjoying the fact that these are my first two things I'm going to list off in the top news items of April 1995. April 19th, Oklahoma City bombing. Kind of a fairly heavy topic. Timothy McVeigh sets a truck bomb at the federal building, killing 168 people, injuring 500. Very heavy topic. April 29th, 10 days later, the longest sausage ever is made in Kitchener, Ontario. It's 28.77 miles, apparently.
Jeez.
Wow. Miles.
Yeah.
Holy moly.
It's a big Twinkie.
Exactly.
Yeah. April 1st, American YouTube personality, was it Logan Paul, I think, was born in Westlake, Ohio. Future guy that will end up trying to beat up an old man in a boxing ring. Death, April 14th, Burl Ives, the American folk singer, and actor and snowman from Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, dies from complications of mouth cancer at age 85. April 18th, in sports, quarterback Joe Montana announces his retirement from football. Top books in April of 95 were The Celestine Prophecy and The Rainmaker.
Celestine Prophecy still hanging around,
It's
man.
still there. Like, it's there for most of the year, I think.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, some of these books are, especially when you look at like the John Grisham books and like they last for just months and months and months. Top movies were Tommy Boy, Bad Boys, and While You Were Sleeping. And then top songs are Take a Bow by Madonna and This Is How We Do It by Montel Jordan.
Thanks. Now that's going to be in my head all night.
You're welcome. That's what we're here for. All right. Well, back to Don Juan DeMarco. This one came out on April 7th, 1995, rated PG-13, with a runtime of 1 hour, 37 minutes. Directed by Jeremy Levin, who did Creator and The Legend of Bagger Vance. He was a screenwriter for that one. Writer, Jeremy Levin. He did The Notebook and Real Steel. Producers, Francis Ford Coppola, who did, I don't know, a couple little movies here and there. Fred Fuchs and Patrick Palmer. Michael Kamen did he was the composer for this one. He did Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and Die Hard. Cinematographer was Ralph D. Bode. He did Saturday Night Fever and The Coal Miner's Daughter. Editor was Tony Gibbs. He did The Commitments and A Fish Called Wanda. Production companies were New Line Cinema, Outlaw Productions, and American Zoetrope. Budget was $25 million. Box office $69 million. Flick Metrics gives it a 65%. Cinema Score gives it an A-. Johnny Depp plays Don Juan, or John Arnold DeMarco. He was in Pirates of the Caribbean and Edward Scissorhands. Marlon Brando plays Dr. Jack Mickler. He was in The Godfather and Apocalypse Now. Faye Dunaway was Marilyn Mickler. She was in Bonnie and Clyde and Chinatown. Geraldine, I was going to mess it up. Geraldine Fayles, maybe, plays Donna Anya. She was in The Young and the Beautiful and The Returned. Bob Dishy plays Dr. Paul Showalter. He was in Author and The Woman in Red. Rachel Ticketon played Doña Inez. She was in Total Recall and Con Air. Talisa Soto played Doña Julia. She was in License to Kill and Mortal Kombat. Richard C. Serafian played Detective Cy Tobias. He was in Vanishing Point and Bound. Steven Singer was Dr. Bill Dunsmore. He was in The Devil's Advocate and Law and Order. Tressa Hughes played Grandma DeMarco. She was in Another World and this movie. Selena, who passed away, I think a week after this movie came out, or a week before this movie came out, played mariachi singer. This was her, I believe, first and only movie role.
All right.
And then Tiny Lister Jr., who I believe passed in 2020, if I've got that right, played Rocco Compton, the male orderly. He was in Friday and The Fifth Element. A couple of other trivia things here. During a scene with Marlon Brando and Johnny Depp, Johnny Depp received some last-minute script changes and had no time to memorize his lines. So Marlon Brando helped him out by cleverly pasting Depp's dialogue into a coffee cup, positioning it so that Depp could read it without it being seen on camera.
Huh.
Which is kind of Marlon Brando's thing, because he didn't like to memorize his lines. And I remember that story of on the set of Superman, when he was Jor-El, he would have his lines taped all over the place. And so they were off camera, so you could never see him. But like when he's looking down at little baby baby Kal-El in the ship, like apparently just out of sight, he has his lines taped right there. So as he's supposed to be looking down and being like, "You will travel far, my little Kal-El, but we'll never leave you, even in the face of our death." And apparently all of that is on a piece of paper taped just so that as he's looking down at the baby, he can just read his lines.
Oh, all right. Well, there you go.
So apparently he was trying to share that very special skill with Johnny Depp.
Okay.
As I mentioned, this was singer Selena's only film role. It was released 1 week after her tragic death, where she was murdered. Mike Judge, the creator of King of the Hill, Beavis and Butthead, found out that Marlon Brando and Johnny Depp were actually fans of Beavis and Butthead. So there were times apparently during this movie that when the cameras were not rolling, they reportedly sat on a couch together and did impressions. Marlon Brando was Butthead and Johnny Depp was Beavis.
Okay.
And at one point, Johnny Depp even asked Judge that if he ever made a live action version of Beavis and Butthead, could he play Beavis?
Nice.
I am the great Cornholio.
TP in my bunghole.
You have TP? Are you threatening me? Anyway, Brando and Dunaway play a married couple in the film. Dunaway had portrayed the villain Selena in Supergirl, 1984. I don't care what anybody says, that's a movie. While Brando played Superman's father, Jor-El, in Superman, 1978, and the scenes in Superman 2. And so we have a little bit of the Superman family in this movie as well. All right. In a world of passion and mystery, a young man believes he is Don Juan, the greatest lover in history. Assigned to his case, psychiatrist Dr. Jack Mickler embarks. Yes, he embarks. That was me. That was me trying to probably do my Spanish. He embarks on a journey that challenges his own perceptions of love and life.
It became evident from a very early age that there was something different about me. By the time I was 10, the attraction that females had for me was becoming of some concern to my mother. At the age of 21, I have fulfilled fantasies of men 3 times my age. My name is Don Juan DeMarco. I am the world's greatest lover.
What's the costume? He's Don Juan. This kid is severely delusional and believes he's Don Juan. Who wants him?
Don Juan. Here's my proposal. 10 days, I will have told you everything you wish to know.
What if I don't believe you, Don Juan?
And you may commit me for as long as you like.
Don Juan is having a distracting influence on the female staff. In his hacienda, there are more nurses on Valium than patients.
There are only 4 questions of value in life, Don Octavio. What is sacred? Of what is the spirit made? What is worth living for? And what is worth dying for? The answer to each is the same. Only love.
Where were you just now?
Mexico.
Have you never met a woman who inspires you to love until your every sense is filled with her?
I've been feeding this kid. He thinks he's Don Juan.
So who is he really?
I don't know. He's getting to me.
But who are you saving? Him or you?
Jack, what's going on?
I've come to realize that after 32 years of marriage, I'm in love with my wife.
You are my angel. On this earth is our paradise. Muchas gracias, señorita.
No. Thank you. Thank you.
I am the world's greatest lover.
All right, 10 major moments. We summarize it so you don't have to. First part, John Arnold DeMarco, we'll find out a little bit later that that's his real name, a 21-year-old man dressed in the style of Don Juan, complete with mask, cape, and wide-brimmed hat, plans to leap from a billboard after a heartbreak. Psychiatrist Jack Mickler intervenes by pretending to be Don Octavio de Flores and convinces him not to jump. John is committed to a mental institution for a 10-day psychological evaluation. Dr. Mickler insists on evaluating John personally during his final 10 days before he is retiring, opting not to medicate him. It's a real falling down kind of a situation here. It's like retirement day, and he's choosing to stick around for, the one last case. Mercifully, it doesn't end badly for him, but John insists that he is the legendary Don Juan and begins narrating his life story, starting with his childhood growing up in Mexico, an affair with his tutor, and a fatal duel involving his father. As John continues his fantastical story, Mickler notices linguistic inconsistencies, such as his Castilian accent, which doesn't quite match his Mexican backstory. Still, he is intrigued and moved. Mickler allows the narrative to unfold, fascinated by John's vivid romantic mythology. Some of the funniest parts in the movie, John's magnetic personality begins to influence the hospital staff, particularly the females. Female employees are distracted, and he even dances with the male attendant on the lawn, who I believe we find out later on ends up moving to Spain. Or maybe he didn't. I don't know. He's not a very reliable narrator, so who knows what happened. At home, Mickler's own life is beginning to be affected. He begins listening to opera and rekindles some passion with his wife, Marilyn, awakening from the dull routine that their marriage may have become. Mickler then goes to visit John's grandmother, who tells a vastly different story, that John grew up in Phoenix, Arizona, not Mexico, and that his father died in a car accident, and that he was the dance king of Astoria?
Yeah, something like
Or
that.
something like that, yeah. This shatters a lot of John's narrative, but when confronted, he claims his grandmother's lying, and he resents her for misunderstanding him. In response to his denial, Mickler tells him a story from his own youth about falling in love with a woman from a magazine, contacting her, being rejected. When John asks what happened to that man, Mickler reveals that he tried to commit suicide, drawing a little bit of a parallel between the two of them. As the 10-day evaluation period nears its end, the hospital administrators urge Mickler to recommend that he is permanently institutionalized. We know how well that works out for everybody that leaves Shawshank, so hopefully that doesn't happen to John here. Mickler remains unconvinced, believing John's behavior is not dangerous, but romantic and deeply imaginative. When Mickler suggests John's mother may have had affairs, John lashes out in anger, revealing the emotional scars beneath this persona that he's kind of crafted for himself. It's very clear that John's identity as Don Juan is his way of coping with some of this past trauma and loss.
Uh-huh.
John finishes his tale with a bit of a flourish. He spent 2 years as a lover in a sultana's harem, and was ultimately rejected by his one true love, Doña Ana, on a remote Greek island. Aren't we all? Mickler, moved by the beauty of the story, tells John that he believes him to be Don Juan, and John recognizes that Mickler has truly become Don Octavio de Flores in his own right. On the last day, final major moment here, on the last day, John agrees to take medication and acknowledges the truth that he was born in Queens. His parents had a troubled marriage. He appears before the hospital board in normal attire, speaks with an American accent, and is released. In a final romantic gesture, Mickler and Marilyn accompany John to the very island from his stories, blurring the line between fantasy and reality. So we reach the end of the movie, and who knows what was true. But do we really care?
No.
No, not really.
And neither did the shrink. He was just along for the ride.
Right.
And it sort of improved his life on top of it.
Everyone involved ended up with a better life because of it all. So, all right, let's dig a little deeper here. All right. Did you enjoy this movie, and when was the first time you saw it?
This was the first time I saw it.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I knew of it, and I knew what it was, but yeah.
And did it do it for you?
Yeah, I liked it a lot.
Yeah. Patrick, what about you? When was the first time you saw this one?
First time I saw this one, this was another recent watch.
Oh,
like
nice.
a lot of these, I would say 36 hours ago.
Okay. All right.
So I was very taken with this movie.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed this movie. I'll leave it at that because I'm just going to gush about it. But I really, really enjoyed this movie.
Yeah. Yeah. First time I saw it, not immediately after it came out, but again, this would have been there was a stretch of time where, again, I know I've mentioned this before, we would watch a bunch of movies by the same director, same actor, same whatever. And so there was a stretch of time where I think we were probably watching a bunch of Johnny Depp movies. One of Sharon's favorite movies at the time was Benny and June. So I remember we'd watch that one several times.
And now,
this one I feel like was probably another mid to late 90s, probably somewhere between
Bones. What do you really
96 and 98. I saw it for the first time, but I remembered more of it. I did watch this one with my wife, and she didn't remember too much of it. As the movie went on, I know we've seen this, and I really feel like we watched it together. As the movie went on, I was like, oh, I vividly remember this scene, or I remember, this part where, Marlon Brando goes home and he's listening to the opera music, and there were the different parts as I was watching the movie, like more and more things kind of came to mind. I don't think I've watched it. I think this was the second time I've watched it. I think the first time was back in the late 90s sometime, and then this would be the second time since then. So it's not one that I've watched multiple times or watched regularly, but definitely memorable. And it's just a fun movie. Like, I really, really enjoy this movie. It's funny, it's fun, it's lighthearted. It's a little bit of, if you want to categorize it as a little bit of like a magical realism kind of a movie, because you don't know what's true and what's not. Like, there's parts of his story that don't work, but there's also parts of his story that do work, and it's hard to explain some of the other stuff unless you take his story at face value. So it's kind of a fun, he's definitely an unreliable narrator. You don't know what is necessarily true. But it's just fun. It's fun and it's lighthearted, and it's fun to watch. Because I haven't seen a lot of Marlon Brando movies, but I always often think of Marlon Brando's roles. The ones I've seen him in, he's always very serious in his different roles. And to see this one and to see it be almost more of a comedic take, and you could just tell they're just having fun. And I feel like the two of these guys together, because Johnny Depp is a great actor, Marlon Brando is a great actor. It just seemed like if you were there on set filming this movie, you probably were getting to watch two really good actors just enjoy working with each other and having a lot of fun. So
yeah, they definitely. I think you told the story about the lines earlier.
Yeah.
I feel like it was almost a game recognizes game moment there.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was. I'm trying to use different words than you did, but it was just fun. It was. My words are failing me tonight, and I'm not sure why.
You do speak them in Spanish. Maybe that helps.
Right. Running them through a translation matrix in my head is going to help a whole lot.
Yeah. Yes, this movie is very fun. It's good. It's fun.
I think some people might get caught up in the what's real of it, and they shouldn't.
Right.
That's not the point here.
Yeah. It's a little bit like, what this movie makes me think of, even though the other one is very much more kind of a magical realism kind of a deal, is The Adventures of Baron Munchausen.
Yes.
Like, this one, it has a very similar vibe to it. Like, they're very different movies, but the storytelling of the whole thing, it's got kind of that vibe to it.
That's a very good.
One of the things about, I think, getting to hear that they seem to have a really good time working together, and since we talked about Val Kilmer, I'll go back to it. If I think I'm remembering this correctly, is in that documentary, the Val documentary, and this is a little sad because you hear about Johnny Depp and Marlon Brando like having fun and pretending to be Beavis and Butthead together and all this, and that they were just two really good actors that just seemed to really enjoy working together. The sad story is, and this seemed to happen in a lot of Val Kilmer's movies, is he was so excited to work on The Island of Dr. Moreau with Marlon Brando. And he's like, oh my God, Marlon Brando is like one of my idols. Like, I can't believe I get to work with him. And I think at that point, that was like the very end of Marlon Brando's career and life and everything. And the story is that Marlon Brando was just kind of checked out, and Val Kilmer was so excited to work with him. And it became, I want to say in the documentary, and maybe I'm remembering this wrong, that Val Kilmer almost stepped back from acting because it was such a bad experience to work on the Island of Dr. Moreau, because he was just so dejected. He's like, this is my hero. Like, I am so excited to work with Marlon Brando, and it was a terrible experience. And that coupled with,
Mhm.
because I think they were kind of back to back with each other. Same thing with Batman. Like he was kind of excited. He's like, "Oh, great! I'll put my own spin on Batman. I'll do this. I'll do this." And the studio basically just said,
I'm
"Nope,
Batman.
nope. You do what we tell you to do. This is how you play Batman. No creativity from your part involved." And so I think that was just. I think the mid '90s were kind of a rough time for Val Kilmer, because mid to late '90s, just because he didn't get to the things he thought he would really enjoy, he didn't get to enjoy.
Yeah.
So I am glad. I'll take it back into a happier, more positive light. I am glad that Johnny Depp had such a good experience with Marlon Brando in this movie.
Yeah, no kidding.
So many of these scenes are so funny. Like as he's telling the stories, and he's talking about growing up and just all these almost seemingly ridiculous scenarios that we're getting into. And it's just
Mhm.
at every turn, it's funny, because at the one point you're like, he's totally making this up.
And then one or two things happen and you're like, what is he?
Right.
Like you start to believe for a minute and then you're like, what am I talking about?
Yeah.
Right.
I think what the scene that really got me, and it was kind of just a quick, almost a little throwaway scene, but it's, he's just finished telling the doctor the story, and he's being brought back to his room by the male orderly, and the doctor sees them out in the yard, and he's even charming that big gruff male orderly into being goofy and having fun.
Mm-hmm.
Like right there, I think that was one of those moments where like, God, is some of this true? This guy has this effect on people. Just the way he is. Like, that's when you kind of start to believe for a minute. And then you're like, oh my God, what am I talking about? Of course not.
Mm-hmm.
This is insane.
Yeah.
But it just is that moment where you're like, what is it?
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes it fun.
Yeah.
Like you can.
Well, and I think the point of this is not. It doesn't really matter if it's true or not, and I think Marlon Brando's character, Dr. Mickler, kind of comes to that conclusion. Doesn't really matter if what he says is true or not, because some of it could be true, some of it seems to possibly be true, some of it very much probably not true. But by the time
he's not bad guy.
No. By the time you get to the end of the movie, it's more of I feel like the point of it is that the point of it is the creativity. Like why live in a world if you have the choice? Why, if you can and if you want to choose, why live in a world that is boring and colorless and all these things when you can add a little bit of spice to your world?
Mm-hmm.
And is he hurting anybody by doing it? No. And so I think that kind of ends up being the point of the movie is if you're asking the question, well, is it real? Is it not real? That might be the wrong question to ask. And the better question is, all right, well, maybe the better question is real, not real. If you wanted to kind of take it into like a deeper discussion question, which we could or could not, is that okay to fall into a made up persona? Because I know you can argue it a couple of different ways. You could say, well, I mean, that's very similar to what some people do online, and sometimes that can be a little bit too much when you try to escape into some kind of a virtual world just to get away from your problems. But I think this movie does a good job of keeping it lighthearted enough to say, look, he's not hurting anybody. He's had kind of a crummy life. Just, and actually he's enriching other people's lives by
sure seems like
the things he's doing. So, I mean, depending on how you want to define enriching, the females might define it differently than than Rocco, but
Was that fair?
but Rocco got to learn how to dance, and he might have moved to Spain.
Right?
Yeah.
Or he was totally lying, and Rocco just took a job at another hospital across town.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? You're probably never going to see Rocco ever again. So which one would you rather believe?
Right. Happy ending.
Yeah. Yes, Don Juan DeMarco is all about the happy ending.
Yes, he is.
Just wait till I get to my 3 questions about Bryan Adams.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. We can talk about that for a moment too. Like that, I always got confused that the Bryan Adams song "Have You Ever Really Loved a Woman," like for some reason, and I don't think I could be faulted for this. Is I kept getting confused. I was like, wait a minute, was that in Three Musketeers, or was that in? Because I know it wasn't Robin Hood. Pick a big movie in the like early mid-ish 90s, and if it somehow features Bryan Adams and maybe also Sting, Rod Stewart, and I don't know, somebody else, then it probably isn't a big movie in the mid-90s. And there was part of me that did not recall that song, because I always would have that song in any of my Bryan Adams playlists. I did not recall that was in this movie. But then when I started to hear it played in kind of like the little Spanish guitar style, little instrumental there, I was like, oh, this movie. This is the one.
Don Juan.
This is the Don Juan DeMarco. Yeah. Which then led in my house to me also having to defend my enjoyment of Bryan Adams, because there are other people in my house that call him Mr. Scratchy Voice and don't like him, but that's okay.
What?
But we don't talk about them.
We don't know. We don't.
What kind of nonsense is that?
I'm going to turn their comment back and say what they meant to say was,
there you go.
Bryan Adams is a totally fine artist to enjoy.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed.
I was about to do like a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 countdown to see if I get a text message from upstairs, but that's okay.
It's a possible.
It's possible. It's probably on its way. So yeah, that's and like I said, this one there's some kind of a vibe, and maybe it's the unreliable narrator, it's the creativity of the whole thing, and it's kind of it is like a similar message to The Adventures of Baron Munchausen. It's creativity is just fun, and even if you don't take it as far as I'm escaping from the real world, I'm doing all this creative thought and creative storytelling to escape from the real world. Even if it's not an escape, if it's just I'm a storyteller, I like telling stories, then I think that's probably a better focus of the movie than is it real, is it not real, do we care? No, not really. And I do. I love the ending of this movie when they get to the island and all of a sudden the woman that, according to some of his stories, was actually the magazine model and was not the real person, suddenly is there. And I think was it Marlon Brando's the voiceover at the end? Something like, well, so we went to the island and did we end up having this magical ending where he met her and they were together again? Yeah, we're going to make it that way. I kind of like that ending. Is it real? That's the story we're going to tell.
Yeah.
Like, all right, I appreciate that. All right. Well, before we go to the tres questions, tres preguntas, you guys have anything else you want to say about Don Juan DeMarco?
See it. If you haven't, it's worth it. And if you have, maybe give it another watch. You might see some new stuff because there's a lot happening there.
Yeah. And as it starts to kind of spice up and enhance his own life, it's fun. Faye Dunaway and Marlon Brando, they're also fun as it goes to the scenes where the two of them are interacting with each other, and it's just every part of this movie is fun. From the creative storytelling, the magical parts of this where he's off on his adventures to how this ends up enhancing the life of his psychiatrist and his marriage. Just such a fun movie.
Yes. I thought Faye Dunaway was awesome in it. She's awesome in most things that I see her in, but their interaction was great. Their heart-to-heart they have at the end is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I love it all.
I do like how subtly he starts showing up dressed in different clothes. Like the one day he shows up dressed all in black.
Mm-hmm.
And doesn't say anything else, but like the way he's sitting is a little different and he's dressed differently and he's, it's just fun.
Mm-hmm.
Different demeanor, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. It's time for 3 questions.
He asks each traveler 5 questions. 3 questions. 3 questions.
It's impossible to answer.
Impossible because you don't know the answer.
Nobody could answer that question.
I want to ask you a bunch of questions. I want to have them answered immediately.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
Question number 1. What is the greatest cinematic love story?
Oh, this is a tough one.
You got a list, Bo?
I got a couple ideas, but I kind of want to see where everyone else is coming down.
Well, my father's answer, because it started a trend that we continue even to this day, his answer would be Gladiator.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the year 2000, when we were down
in the year 2000.
Yeah, in the year 2000, my dad wanted to go see a movie, and he was our hero. So he wanted to go see Gladiator, and we were down in the year was 2000. The location, Champaign, Illinois. And he wanted to go see this movie, and I think my mom, maybe the rest of the family, not as interested. I was totally fine with it. It looked like a good one to me. And so he somehow convinced everybody to go see the movie. And his convincing line was, "It's a love story. You'll enjoy it."
Mm-hmm.
And I remember we got out of the movie, and my mom just looked at me and goes, "Where was the love story part?"
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "Well, she loved Russell Crowe's character, and she loved her son, and it's like there's just a lot of love in this movie." So that's our usual line, is that if there's a movie that somebody's a little reluctant to see, we'd be like, "You know what? Don't worry about it. It's a love story."
It's a love story. That's hysterical.
So everything's a love story. And then you just try to find, you stretch the truth a bit, like this movie does, to try to figure out how something's a love story. Godzilla -1, great love story.
There you go.
Yeah. Godzilla really enjoys stepping on people. And swimming. He loves to swim. My answer, I went through a little bit of a short list of movies that I wanted to try to figure out which one I felt was the greatest cinematic love story. And I kind of narrowed it down to, and I'm going to go with It's a Wonderful Life.
That was one of the ones on my list.
Was that on your list? Okay.
Okay. I've got Trinity and Neo from The Matrix.
I thought you might. Go. Yeah.
Spans 4 movies.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
I mean, yeah, I could have said Han and Leia, because does it get any better than I Love You? I know.
I know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They were all, of course, on my list.
Yeah.
I would be probably fired from the podcast if they didn't make the list.
Probably, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Casablanca.
Yes. not necessarily romantic love. If you wanted to take this a different route and say Star Trek II: The Wrath of True Love, so treasure your love. Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. I have been, and always shall be your friend.
Your friend.
It's a different kind of love.
It is.
I've learned
but is
from
it any less true?
No, I've learned tonight that platonic love can exist between two captains on a starship. And actually, I think there's some fanfic out there that takes that even further.
Oh boy.
Indeed.
Oh
I think
boy.
that's all that needs to be said.
Yeah.
That's all I've got to say about that.
Mm-hmm.
In the Spock box, I have been and always shall be your friend with benefits.
Things done in the Spock box stay in the Spock box.
Yep. I have been and always shall be your friend with benefits.
Lord.
Egon has gone bye-bye, Ray.
Hold on.
That's extraordinary. What would you like to do next?
JT Esteban commanding.
Yep, there you go. All right. Okay. Question number 2. What is your favorite Marlon Brando role?
Also a challenging question. You really put yourself on a roll.
Yes, I tried to.
And I just don't know how I feel about that.
My answer is just because I have not. I mean, I've seen a few Marlon Brando, but I have not seen as many as I would like to. And so my initial answer, I think the better of the two roles is The Godfather. My favorite though is Jor-El. Just because that's the first time I ever remember seeing him in a movie. I watched that movie millions of times growing up, and he is and always shall be my Jor-El. So I mean, that for me, that was the very first time I remember seeing him in anything. So I think I gotta go with Jor-El.
You mentioned The Godfather. I thought about Apocalypse Now.
Yeah, Apocalypse Now is good. Patrick, what do you got?
I'm gonna go with The Godfather. Like I just, to me, that's the iconic role. That's what I think of when I think of Marlon Brando. But I'm gonna say also on my list, all the ones you mentioned, but The Wild One.
Okay, I have not seen that one.
Yeah, that was back in 1955. And wait, 55? I'm not sure, but it was it was loosely based off of when a biker gang roared into a city out west and kind of took it over for 3 days. I mean, a lot of it was very, very much sensationalized, because it made a better story, and the press posed photographs to make it seem like a bunch of ruffians and all that. But even though it was a lot of it was kind of faked and posed and all that, it kind of captured the nation's interest, and the threat of the biker gang roaring into town was born, and The Wild One was the movie that was based off that.
Pearls were clutched and babies were locked inside.
Oh yeah. Indeed. Oh yeah, all those things.
I would be remiss if I did not mention that for the 2 out of 3 people currently on this podcast that went to Libertyville High School, Marlon Brando also went to Libertyville High School for a very short amount of time. And legend is, I don't know how true it is, the legend is he rode his motorcycle through the halls.
That is the legend.
Yeah. I don't think he was there very long.
No, he wasn't. I think just freshman year, right? Isn't that the story?
I think so. Yeah. So that is one of our many claims of fame.
Yeah, the urban legend was always that there was a desk down in storage in the basement that he had carved his name into or some nonsense.
Oh, really?
And all I can say is if it was there, I guarantee it got lost at some point, and that's just sad.
Yeah.
Because that's the kind of thing you should keep.
Oh yeah.
Well, it's lost, but it's being taken care of by top men.
Yes.
And then you see some custodian from the high school walking down this very long row of just boxes and boxes and boxes of. One of those boxes contains the desk of the Brando.
It is.
The rest of them are like files and old textbooks and whatnot. But is that one the desk of the Brando? I'm pretty sure.
That's what the crate says.
Mm-hmm. All right. And finally, question number 3. If you had to woo someone using only lines from Bryan Adams songs, which line would you choose?
Well, I'm up a creek with. Yeah, I'm up a creek without a paddle. I don't know Bryan Adams songs as good as I should.
Oh, well, my
Much
initial answer is.
Back in the summer of '69.
Okay, that's my joke answer. My actual answer, because don't use that as a pickup line. My actual answer would probably be more along these lines.
Such a heart, such a soul. And when you find me there, you'll search no more. Don't tell me.
So that's probably mine. I pull that one from everything I do.
Yeah, that's good. Those are good calls.
There's the stanza from All for Love.
Yes.
When there's love inside, I swear I'll always be strong. Then there's a reason why. I'll prove to you we belong, etc., etc.
There you go.
Not strictly Bryan Adams, but I mean,
yeah.
When you add Sting,
right?
I mean,
it's the triumvirate.
Yeah, really, the pentaverate.
Yeah, it's if it's good enough for the Roman Empire, it's good enough for Sting, Rod Stewart, and Bryan Adams.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. Well, so Pat, what you're saying is we need to introduce you to more Bryan Adams.
Yeah, I need to listen to more Bryan Adams. Like you put stuff on, everything you played, I'm like, oh yeah, I know that tune. I know that tune. But I have only a passing knowledge of his music.
Okay. Well, if I can make a recommendation to you,
yeah,
I would say my two favorites. If you're going to look at albums, probably Reckless and Waking Up the Neighbors.
Okay.
And honestly, he has how long is he? I feel like there's some other ones he's done quasi recently.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I've listened to much of any of his stuff after the mid 90s.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't either.
But I mean, those are the early ones. I think Reckless and Waking Up the Neighbors. Reckless was like mid 80s. Waking Up the Neighbors was early 90s. Which is always kind of funny because I feel like there's a stretch of time in the early 90s when like everybody's album cover was black and white and had like your silhouette on the front, because I'm thinking of Seal. I mean, the very first Seal album my dad ever bought was a black and white album, and I think it had Seal's silhouette on the front. The Waking Up the Neighbors album is a black and white cover with Bryan Adams holding like a megaphone.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you were an artist in the early 90s and you put out an album, you had to have the blank white empty space background with your silhouette on the front cover. That was the guarantee you were going to make it big.
Okay.
So, but yes, if you wanted to dive into it a little bit, those would be the two albums I'd recommend getting started with.
Cool.
All right. Anything else we want to say about Don Juan DeMarco? Or any of the three questions? If you had any other thoughts? I think we've solved the world's problems here.
I think so.
Yeah.
Feeling good about that.
It's a very fun movie, great acting. You'll enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah, it is awesome. All right, well, this is Love and Drama Month, month of April. Our Patreons, this one, Higher Learning from 1995 is the full length. Patreon short is While You Were Sleeping from 95. And then this starts off our month with Don Juan DeMarco. Forget Paris with Billy Crystal and Deborah Winger is next week. Mr. Holland's Opus is after that. Blue Velvet is in the middle of the month, our 10th anniversary rewatch from 1986. And then we finish the month off with Leaving Las Vegas and The American President. So we got a lot of really good stuff coming up in the month of April. Gentlemen, as always, thank you for being here with me.
Thank you, John.
All right, everybody, be excellent to each other. Go watch some good movies, and we will see you back here next time.
Bring the lights down low, it's time to show. Lights, camera, you know what we mean. Behold the magic of the silver screen.